Welcome into the Irish Squad Show. I'm Joe George, post-game host. Another big change is coming to the Notre Dame coaching staff.
I'm Alan Pinkett, two-time All-American, and I should have copyrighted the slogan, "Leave no doubt," because I heard Marcus Freeman say it on the telecast.
And I'm Allison Hayes. I've been covering the Irish for more than 20 years. And before we talk about anything else, we have to give a birthday shout out to our All-American, Alan Pinkett.
Happy birthday, AP. Reggie Brooks here, 1992 All-American. And I'm saying it's a sad day for the Irish with the loss that we just suffered.
Play like a champion today. It's the Fighting Irish Squad Show. Everything Notre Dame Fighting Irish every week. Breaking down the biggest news and game-changing plays the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Wake up the echoes. The Fighting Irish Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Irish Squad Show here on the Locked On Irish YouTube and audio channels. Joe George, Alan Pinkett, Reggie Brooks, and Allison Hayes here with you for the next hour as we'll discuss a major change in the Notre Dame coaching staff, what it means, how they find a replacement, how attractive of a job it, I think, obviously is. We'll discuss all of that. The college football playoff format is not changing, but people are upset that Notre Dame gets an auto bid if they're in the top 12 next year. So we'll discuss that and maybe even sprinkle in these fines that just broke from Deion Sanders fining all of his players, even though they're not under contract, but fining them a good chunk of money if they're missing practices and games. We'll hit on all of that on the show today. But Allison, I'll start with you here today. Mike Mickens is leaving for the Baltimore Ravens, a big-time promotion for him. So it's awesome for him, first of all. Congratulations. But it kind of sucks for Notre Dame that he's not going to be with the team next year.
He's been so good for Notre Dame over his tenure here in South Bend. And he's one of those guys, though, that you sort of knew it was coming, right? At some point, someone was going to steal him away, whether that was a higher position in college or now making it to the NFL. So really happy for him and a great situation for him to move into there where with Baltimore, he can make a difference. He can be reunited with Kyle Hamilton and just kind of see what goes from there. But disappointing for Notre Dame, absolutely. What he's been able to accomplish with this group and really elevating this group to being one of the best secondaries in the entire country consistently too. It's just been one after another. We've seen him working with, obviously with Leonard Moore, but he's also worked with Ben Morrison, and back in Cincinnati, he worked with Sauce Gardner. I mean, so he's just got this resume of incredible players that he's helped develop and get them up to where they need to be. And it's a loss, surely, for Notre Dame. I'm not worried that the Irish and Marcus Freeman aren't going to go out and find a quality replacement for him, but it is really difficult to lose a guy like that, especially when it comes to the development aspect, but also the recruitment aspect. And you've got guys that are coming in here because they want to be coached by Mike Mickens. And so I don't think we're going to see guys jumping ship. I'm not saying that, but I just think, they've got to be hurting. If you think you're a Notre Dame fan and you're hurting knowing that Mike Mickens is gone, imagine being one of those players that was coming here to learn and grow and develop under him. And so, but hats off to Mike. I'm happy for him. And just, when you find out that he's leaving, you start kind of like going back through and looking up through, his career and different things about him. And one thing that I just thought was really cool was him as a football player himself at Cincinnati. And as a player, he was an All-American there, and he had 3 pick sixes for his college career. He left Cincinnati as the school's career leader in interceptions and interception return yards, and he was a 7th round pick by the Cowboys in 2009. He didn't have like a stellar career in the NFL by any means, but at the combine, he ran a 4.53 40-yard dash there, and but he had a knee injury his senior year at Cincinnati that really sort of changed the trajectory of his career, because who knows, what that could have led to for him. But again, just great to see what he's done here, and really like that he gets to reconnect with Jesse Minter. Jesse was a graduate assistant at Cincinnati when Mickens was a player there. And so they've got that background of working together. So just really interesting to see how this all pans out. And we can talk about it. I don't want to monopolize too much, and I'll jump back in when I get a chance, but we can talk about some of the guys that are going to possibly replace him here in South Bend.
Hey, so I had the opportunity to personally see Coach Mickens do his job. My great nephew, who signed a letter of intent with Syracuse, actually last spring came up to Notre Dame to do a visit. And so I got to pal around with him and, do a tour and listen to a presentation from Coach Mickens. And my great nephew actually asked him, what position would you have me play? And Coach Mickens, said, well, your skills will dictate where you will play. And then broke into how they coach the position and how they teach man coverage and zone coverage and combination coverage and how they teach punching the ball out. And, I left that meeting saying, damn, I'm not playing anymore because I could have super glue on my fingers. It wouldn't matter because of all the techniques they were teaching for knocking the ball out. But just the amount of knowledge that he was able to fill these kids with, so that, we talk about football being more of a cerebral game. It's really cerebral in that defensive backfield, and the type of players that he was looking for, or the type of players he was able to teach and have them learn. Now I feel happy for him because, to me, it seems like when you go to the NFL, it's because you're interested in competing on the top level in the world. Where in college, you're more nurturing kids, getting them ready for the next level. But there's something about being able to week in, week out, compete against the best. And even though Baltimore has 4 first-round picks in that defensive backfield, they gave up a ton of yards last year. So he's going to a job. He's going to have to do a lot of work. But I did, when I was there at Notre Dame and watched practice, he was mentoring this young kid, this coach that they got from West Virginia. And what they had done is they had moved him over to another position to help coach, but he was still being mentored by Mike Mickens, and I can't recall his name. Young kid, and I can say young kid because my ass is 62. But I think some of that knowledge has been passed down to another coach. Will they go get another DB coach? I'm sure, but you still have some people there that will come from the Mickens tree to help, keep those DBs afloat and keep that same teaching that they have now.
Well, my biggest thing is, you lose someone is you talked about that has a connection with the players. As much as people want to talk about the schools and kids going to school, kids just, now and for a long time have gone to play for an individual. A lot of times it's the head coach. So I think, again, I don't think there'll be a lot of attrition or people leaving because of the departure of Mike Mickens, because of, Coach Freeman and his acumen as a recruiter. But this is a big blow. This is a big blow from a continuity standpoint. And he was one of those guys that, young guy that had that same energy as Coach Freeman to get out there and hit the recruiting trail. But on top of that, his ability to get guys coached up and getting them prepared to make that next move. A guy that kind of, I'm not saying he's on this level yet, but it's reminiscent of Brian Hartline and what he's done with receivers. And, he's a head coach now. But when you get a Brian Hartline coach receiver, you're getting top talent and you're going to get a well-coached individual. Same thing for the guys that Coach Mickens has coached up. Those guys are going to be on their P's and Q's. They're going to know their assignment. They're going to be, attention to detail. And, to see that, for a young guy, and again, I'm all for him making that next step to, because again, that's from a coaching standpoint. Just like a player, the NFL is what you're always striving for. And we talked about that with Coach Freeman, and at some point in time, I think that's going to happen as well, because that's the pinnacle. And you get some guys again that are college coaches and some that are pro coaches. So it may be a deal where as he progresses, and again, I also think it didn't really help. Didn't help him not getting the DC job. I think that kind of played into it to a degree. But all for him making that next move, and you never know, he may make the move and then come back and come back to collegiate ranks, but as a head coach. But I think that's his ultimate goal, is to be a head coach, whether it's collegiately, because I 100% agree, Alan, his ability to mentor and prepare young men to play, that's not what you're going to do necessarily at the NFL level. You're there to manage and say, okay, hey, here's the system that we're running. Here's my expectations. You guys go out and execute. Collegiately, high school, it requires more of a teaching and coaching. And that's why I still feel that he's that type of a coach, that he fits that mold as a teacher, a motivator, someone that he helps with the development of an athlete over the course of time. And to me, he's more of a college coach. Not that he can't coach at the professional level. I think he's needed at the collegiate level because of his ability to mentor and get guys coached up and prepared for that next step.
Well, that was going to be my question to you, especially Alan and Reggie, who played in the NFL, and you've experienced coaching at all of these different levels. How different is it to coach from college and the role that they play there, where you're saying in college they really are developing, they're helping these guys? But what do you do then when you're at the NFL, where you're already developed? And what aspect can he benefit those players once he's there? How does he, you said, there's so many good players with the Ravens right now in that secondary. How does he step in and make a difference there?
I'll go first. I had more trash coaches in the NFL than I ever had in college, but you still remember the good ones. I had some very good ones that were on top of their stuff and could actually teach you something. But I had some that were just buddies with the head coach and yes men to the head coach, didn't know a damn thing about football, and were holding the running back coaching position. Because, really, what is a coach going to teach you in the NFL about being a running back? But, I did have one. The best one I had was a dude at the Saints, and I'm going to remember his name here in a minute, but I think his son is coaching now. But I wish I had the guy I had at the Saints. I wish I had from the very beginning, because just the amount of knowledge he filled us with, because it's a position where you run based on what you see, but it also helps to know how is the line blocking this thing? What does it look like when it stunts? Knowing the line calls and things like that all helps you. But like I said, I had better coaches in college than I did in the NFL, with the exception of one guy, and I wish I could remember his name.
Biggest thing is, like I said, the difference I saw was the development at the collegiate level. And I give a lot of props to my coach in college, Earl Mosley, because he was, he kind of gave me more practical tips about, hey, here's what you need to do to increase and develop. But it was also a maturation, understanding of how to mature and guidance. And it wasn't just about football. It was about life as well. So, developing into a better person, a better man. But professionally, I would have to say Tony Nathan. He was a really good coach because he didn't get caught up in a lot of the dynamics, and he played the position. So he was, for me, he was a guy, again, I wish I would have had when I was at Washington, because he educated me on how to be a professional. And that's a different dynamic of what you need to know, because you need to understand the business side of the game as well as the X's and O's. And also know that, hey, people aren't here to be your friend. They're not here necessarily to be buddy. They're here to do a job. And that's the demarcation for me is, in college, you're there to, you're building that camaraderie, you're building that connectedness that, a lot of the people that you meet in college and teammates, those are people you're going to know and have a connection with long after you finish, playing the game. But professionally, it's, hey, when you clock in, be locked in, be focused on what we need to do, and it's the game plan. Understand the game plan, understand how to execute, and there's a reason why they call the NFL not for long. Stands for not, because it's, if you don't understand the emphasis of the professional side of football, and you kind of have that starry-eyed, at least for me, perception as a collegiate athlete, it's definitely different just from that standpoint. Not so much from the coaching side as it is as a business. And that's for college coaches, going to the NFL. And like I said, Jeff Burris is a teammate of mine. He coached in college, and he's also coached in NFL. There's a difference, and it's being able to understand those differences. And, there's going to be a transition for Mike Mickens of, because you're not coaching up kids, you're coaching up grown ass men that you can't just, if you don't have their respect, they're not going to listen to you. But you gain their respect by knowing your role, knowing the job that you're called there to do, and focusing on that. So that'll be the interesting dynamic for me is, not going into, Baltimore to kind of, hey, let me, show you what I can do. No, hey, here's my expectations, set the groundwork early, and then, okay, I need you to execute. We're not going to go hang out after the game, because people got families. We're not going to, do this. It's like, hey, I'm here to coach you up, run the defense as on the back end as is what we need for this team to win. Because at the end of the day, that's what keeps you on as a NFL coach is winning. And you're like, and Alan told it at the beginning, they gave up a lot of yards with a lot of top talent. Can't happen because that'll get you gone real quick.
By the way, I had to look it up. The beauty of the internet. The coach I had at the Saints was Jim Skipper. And you talk about a world of knowledge and how much I learned. And I wish I had him when I first got into the NFL. But the rest of the running back coaches I had were garbage.
It does feel like, guys, that Notre Dame's in an interesting position now because, like, we've seen them, they pulled from the NFL. Like, they hired Charlie Partridge to be their D-line coach. So it feels like kind of anything's on the table now to replace this. And this is a move that, like, honestly, I think Marcus Freeman probably knew was coming or was a good chance for it to happen. Like, I was talking on the Bears squad show actually the other day. Like, Mickens was on the top of my list for the Bears if Al Harris took a job with like the Cowboys or something like that. So I think this is one you could see coming. Allison, do you have any candidates in mind that you think of? Like, I have the first one. When I was looking through a couple lists that stood out to me was Chris O'Leary.
Yeah,
who spent time with Notre Dame for 5 years. Actually, spent a year with Jesse Minter as a safeties coach with the Chargers. He's the defensive coordinator now at Western Michigan. And while it's like, yeah, you go from DC to defensive backs coach, it feels like a step down in a way. But you're going from Western Michigan to Notre Dame, like it'd be a huge upgrade. So that's the name who's at the top of my list. So Allison, I don't know if you have other candidates that you think would be a good fit for the Irish to fill this spot.
well, and let's not forget that O'Leary did have the chance to coach with Kyle Hamilton and Xavier Watts. And he is an Indiana native, so he is a guy that's from the state of Indiana. And it's not like Western Michigan is that far. Kalamazoo is about an hour or 15 probably from South Bend, if that. So it's not like it's really far or that much closer to home, but it's still, he's an Indiana guy. He has the roots here. He understands what it means and is to coach in South Bend. I think that's important too. And yes, in a way it would be a step down because he would no longer be defensive coordinator, which he just got promoted to at Western, but this is Notre Dame. You have a chance to legitimately make the college football playoffs and play and win a national championship at Notre Dame. I don't know that you can say the same thing about Western Michigan, right? So it is a step up in that sense. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a great look and very interesting to see how that plays out. And I saw someone in our comments here, some of the same names that I've been reading, just doing research and looking things up. But the two coaches from Indiana, the Hoosiers, so their coaching staff is probably going to get picked apart unless they start throwing some cash at those guys because they've obviously done a stellar job in Bloomington. But the two names that stand out, Ola Adams, who's the defensive backs coach. And he's overseeing arguably one of the best secondaries in college football. We're right there competitive with Notre Dame and maybe better, maybe number one, number two, you never know. But that group that has been absolutely phenomenal the last two seasons there in Bloomington, and he's got experience. He also coached with the Denver Broncos. He's had success at Villanova. He's been at Penn State, so he's got a lot of seasoning under his belt, if you will. He's not just a new young guy. He has some experience there, and he has experience coaching at an extremely high level and won a national championship. And then the other coach at IU is that Rod Ojong, and he's the cornerbacks coach, and he's a pure cornerbacks coach there. And same thing, over the last 2 years, he has had a lot of success, and he really worked a lot with star cornerback D'Angelo Pons. So those are the ones that are the most interesting to me. I've heard other names being thrown out, Demetrius Sumler, Corey Parker, some other guys too, but those would be the three that I'm most interested in right now, is keeping tabs on Ojong, Adams, and then of course O'Leary.
All right, let's take our first break here. Let's talk about the college football playoffs. We know exactly what it's going to look like next year. The Big Ten wanted 24, the SEC wanted 16, so we end up with 12. And what the fallout is from that, we'll get to that next year on the Irish Squad Show.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. You can ride with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup, or you can take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming. And if you're really feeling confident, go all in and build a parlay around the players and moments you think will decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. Sunday is shaping up to be an incredible day of football. I like the favorites in both matchups. I'm going to take the Seahawks to cover -2.5 against the Rams in the NFC Championship, and the New England Patriots to cover on the road against the Broncos without Bo Nix. FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your NFL playoff profit boosts every game day.
All right, guys, so we knew the 23rd was the day we were waiting for to find out what the fallout for the college football playoff was going to be. As I mentioned before the break there, it was the Big Ten wanted a 24-team playoff, which seems way too big for me. We knew the SEC wanted 16. They could not come to agreement. And frankly, those are the only two opinions that matter that we've realized. Like, it does not matter what Notre Dame or the Big 12 or the ACC or any of the little conferences want. Like, it's what the two big boys want. That's what we get. And because they could not come to agreement, we stick with 12 with the twist that was signed in last year, that Notre Dame is guaranteed a spot in the playoffs if they're ranked in the top 12. Also with that is that every conference champion of the Power Four conferences is also guaranteed a spot. So this year the playoffs would look very differently if they followed that rules. Notre Dame would have been in instead of Miami, and Duke would have been in instead of James Madison. So I think I'm not surprised, guys, to see how people are so upset about the Notre Dame part of this. I think it's being overlooked that the 10 conference commissioners all signed off on this and approved it. It's not like Notre Dame just walked in and forced their way into saying we're a top 12 team, we're in the playoff. This was signed off by everyone. And frankly, I think the Duke part of this that would have played out this year is more egregious because they were a 4-loss team that didn't deserve to be in the playoff. They would have got in this year instead of James Madison. So I'm not surprised to see the anger towards Notre Dame, but just Allison, what's your thoughts on that? We're sticking with 12 and that this, kind of weird rule that's been put into place is also staying put.
Well, I like that they're staying with 12. I think that makes sense right now. I don't think you want to make so much change so quickly. Boom, 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 boom. You need to allow some of it to kind of work itself out and see what works and what doesn't work. And to change so quickly, I think would just be pulling the trigger too fast. That's not to say that maybe the current format doesn't need some tweaking still, but they made the concession. It is shocking to me. I mean, I literally am Googling, why would other athletic directors agree to this deal for Notre Dame? I don't understand what the benefit is and why the other 10 would sign off on it for Notre Dame. If I was not a Notre Dame fan, I would be furious and frustrated and just can't understand even what the benefit is. The only thing I can find online when I'm searching for this is just money, media rights deals, and TV ratings. They say that it benefits all of them, I guess, because of what a brand Notre Dame is. I don't know. Maybe you guys can chime in on that. And I mean, obviously, we know Notre Dame is a big brand. We know they've got, they're going to have all eyes on Notre Dame whenever they play. But I don't see what the benefit, again, is to the other people that are voting to allow Notre Dame to get that guarantee. But I think it's great for Notre Dame. I mean, it's huge. And really, does that mean it's just Notre Dame, or does it mean other independents as well? If any other independent?
It's just Notre Dame. Like if UConn found their way to the top 12, it does not apply to them.
Yeah, that's wild. But that tells you, and for Cam Newton, for 1 second, for Cam Newton to say that Notre Dame is not relevant in college football is the most asinine thing that I could have anyone say right now. And especially when you look at something like this, where just Notre Dame is included in this deal that's been worked out just because it's Notre Dame. That tells you how absolutely relevant Notre Dame is in the world of college sports.
He got corrected when he mentioned that they weren't relevant just by the fact that they played in the national championship last year. So that's pretty relevant. So don't worry about Cam. He going down that SEC hill. And I mean, he's got some good stuff to say, but Notre Dame has existed because half the country loves him and half the country hates him. So that's what makes Notre Dame so interesting. But listening to them stay at 12 participants, to me, makes it sound like they're not interested in finding the 12 best teams. They're just interested in how many members of their conference they can get in. And I guess from what I understand, the group that wanted 16 wanted the option 3 years from now of expanding more. It's like, what is that? Why don't we see if the existing format works? So to me, they're not interested in getting the best 12. And secondly, I don't trust that committee. And so what they say is Notre Dame has to be ranked 12 or higher. That's why I said I should have copyrighted daggone leave no doubt, because Notre Dame can't get in there losing 2 games. It'll be close losing 1. You got to leave no doubt. Otherwise, this committee will rank them 13.
That is a good point, because, we do look at a team like an Alabama or some of the SEC teams that are going to possibly have 3 losses and still maybe even be in that top 12. But if Notre Dame has 3 losses, I would say, especially with their schedule, when you look at a schedule like next year's, they're not going to be in that top 12. And so there is not as much wiggle room maybe for them. I don't know. I mean, either way, if you lose 3 and you're Notre Dame with that schedule, you're probably not getting in anyway.
Right.
Okay, we're forgetting about one other thing here. I mean, 16, 24. We are talking about college athletics, so universities and colleges into places of higher learning, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, why do we keep glossing over the fact that if you increase this beyond 12, we're bumping up against the Super Bowl? I mean,
that was my
is
question to
asinine.
ask you. How do you even
You can't.
configure that if
You
you get to
can't
24
do that unless are they, because they're not going to be willing to give up the conference championships. They make too much money off of those. So you add more games. So again, I go back to either you're going to be a professional organization with professionals and these are employees, or let's don't do that. 12 is plenty. And if you're going to do 12, nothing against James Madison, nothing against Tulane, the top rated, conferences get their teams in because let's think about it. I mean, SEC, as much as you want to, they got 5 teams in. I mean, SEC didn't do too well in just the whole dynamics of the bowl system and championship.
Hell no.
So their dictating status is dropped off of it, at least in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is about money, plain and simple. You don't have to like Notre Dame. You can be, because again, the fact that Cam Newton is saying they're not relevant on national television shows of their relevance. How much conversation during the course of this whole playoffs was Notre Dame constantly being brought up? Constantly. Oh, well, Notre Dame ain't this. Paul Feinbaum. I mean, literally, Kurt Herbstreit. Everybody was talking about Notre Dame, and they weren't even in the playoffs. So, okay, I'm sorry, deal with it. Notre Dame sells, whether it's from a negative standpoint or positive standpoint. Notre Dame makes money, even when they're not relevant. So you don't have to like it. It is what it is. And I go back to the original statement. Hey, if you want to be Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, you can go independent. We'll help you. We'll tell you how to do it. We'll tell you how to do it because, I mean, at this point, this is the argument on both sides, whether it's the SEC or the Big Ten. Their schools want more money. The reason that they joined conferences in the first place, so they could get more money. So, where things are, who got more money when they made the playoffs last year? That $20 million that Notre Dame got pissed off a lot of folks. And the fact that, like you said, Joe, they got in because they were voted in by the conferences and the committee. So it wasn't like Notre Dame just went up there and said, well, we think we should be the only team that gets a bye if we make the top 12. I mean, did anybody argue that point?
That's what I was wondering. Like, I wonder, like, because I almost imagine it's like they needed the Notre Dame swing vote to approve, like, the top 4 teams getting the auto bid. Like, I almost imagine, like, it being, like, a 5-5 vote, and then Notre Dame being the one, like, well, if you give us a spot in the top 12, we'll vote with you guys. And what happened last year, this last playoff with Duke winning the conference championship and not deserving to be in the playoff, but would be in this new format, I think is an outlier. Like, I think the ACC has their own problems within the fact that Duke shouldn't even have been in the conference championship game. It should have been Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, this problem, like, it's not, and I think that's what people are, like, fans are misinterpreting with all of this, is they feel like this new rule is in reaction to what happened in the playoffs. But it's actually what was voted on last year. And, like, again, it would have gone away. Like, this rule would have vanished if they would have gone to 16 or 24. It was only guaranteed to stay in place if they stayed at 12. So I think that's where, like, fans are missing the moment here from other teams and other conferences. Where, like, they just don't get it. But I just imagine Notre Dame, for these conferences to get what they want, they need Notre Dame on their side. Because there's only 4 conferences now. The Pac-12 is, I guess, back next year, still largely irrelevant. But, like, you don't have that 5th member like you did with the Pac-12. They need Notre Dame on their side for all of this stuff to get the committee, this group, to do what they want. So I think it's largely an overreaction, and people are just upset. I agree with what you're saying, Reggie. Like, if teams want to just go independent, then just go independent. They won't, because they won't find TV partners like Notre Dame has been able to find with NBC and all these different things. But I don't know, Alice.
Though. I think they could, simply because of the dynamics of where college football in particular is now. You can break off your football entity, can develop their own, conference or whatever you want to call it, but each school is independent, because that's the gripe. That's why SEC and the Big Ten want more numbers, is so they can get more of their teams in, because they split that revenue.
Yep.
And it's the Michigans, it's the Ohio States, the Penn States in the Big Ten that are pissy about, hey, we're splitting equal dollars with Northwestern, Rutgers, Maryland, and SEC. They don't complain, because I got to tell you, Greg Sankey, that dude is phenomenal. Because have you heard any complaint? You heard it out you heard it out the Big Ten, you heard it out the ACC complaining about how things go, and the differential in money. Like USC came in to UCLA and took a cut. Now, they didn't get a full member cut in the Big Ten to leave the Pac-12. So that tells you something about, the money that's been involved. There was nobody in the SEC. Have you heard anybody complain about, hey, having to share dollars with this one or that one? That's why they was like, 16 is good for us, because we're going to still get the big TV deal. And then we're going to and everybody views the SEC as the football program. And people are forgetting the SEC right now might be the top basketball conference right now.
Yeah.
Why? Quads the cap, though. Because, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, they get a lot of teams in like the ACC used to. So it's all about money and where those revenue sources come from. So I think 12 is good because of, I'd still go back to these are college students, whether you want to be a college student or not, that has to factor in some form or fashion, because we're making these kids grow up way too fast. And again, a lot of the things, if we just say, hey, this is why this is the way it is, I think, and explain to them, educate them on why you probably don't want this. Because I remember telling the guys, like, when you transition, as I said, from college to pros, whole different dynamic. And I can't count the number of guys that went to the pros and would call back and say, Reg, you were absolutely right. Because there's a dynamic that you have in college that we're losing. And it's not benefiting anybody in the long run.
Well, here's my question. How many teams are there in the FCS championship? What's the number of teams? Because they seem to not have a problem, and they get done early enough with their playoff system.
Well, they don't have conference championships, though.
Oh, okay. All right. There we go.
Yeah,
So
and they
start
also have, I think it's 16.
Yeah.
I think Illinois State was the 16th seed this last year, and they made a run to the championship game. I think the thing with that, and we'll kind of continue this throughout the rest of the show, so we have plenty of time for everyone to get in, and your comments as well here on YouTube, and you can hit us up on social media. I think the one thing is like, you have to just change the calendar, move up the pace. Like, if you're going to add games, I think regardless, they should move up the pace. We're live here. It's January 26th. Next year, the national championship game is on January 25th. Like, this is the day after the national. Why is it later next year? Like, why they're pushing it back farther and farther and farther, and all the complications they have within the college football playoff, they've also proven that they can avoid. Like, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the transfer portal was open during March Madness last year. And it's like, while these teams are in this tournament, the portal is open. Now, that's an NCAA sanctioned tournament, so maybe this is why it's different. The calendar is a little different, obviously. We all get that. But the NCAA just changed the portal. the portal now officially opens the day after the national championship game in college basketball. There's no reason why. Like it's like they can get it like half right, but the NCAA, Allison, just feels like they can never totally get it right with things that are going on.
It also feels like they've lost all control altogether, and there's so many outside entities that are involved. And that's the aspect I don't understand. I don't think the NCAA was doing itself any favors for many, many years back in the times, even Reggie and Alan, when you guys were playing. I think it was almost like too much control, and now they have no control, and they're going to have to go. I don't know that they can even get any of that back now that they've given it up. Between the transfer portal, the NIL, all of that maybe needed some tweaking, but not to the level that it's at right now. And then you look at even the college football playoffs. There's a whole college football playoff committee that really isn't connected to the NCAA. And I'm looking at this, and I'm again Googling, why does ESPN have so much say over the format of the CFP? And it's because of money. It is because, and I looked this up, a 6-year, $7.8 billion deal that keeps them as the media rights holder through the 2031-32 season. And so they get to dictate when the deadline is to vote and ultimately sort of what direction this all goes. And so it's that aspect of it. I mean, and I don't know that you even can come back from that at this point. But that's been, I think, the most disappointing thing of all. And we talk about it a lot, Reggie, about how it definitely has become a professional sport. That all of the charm and the things that made college football so special, and don't get us wrong, we are still huge college football fans, always will be. But some of the pureness of it, I think, is what is now going away. And sure, there's still some wonderful things that will always be a part of college football, but so much of it now is becoming a professional sport that it's sort of taken away from some of that.
Well, the NCAA is in the situation that it is with football. Yeah, they want football to go away because in terms of the postseason, NCAA has no oversight of college football.
But
and
why? They
relinquished that. They relinquished that years ago. That's why you got the bowl system, because for the longest time, football, colleges didn't want them on campus and didn't want to have it as a sport because they were so dangerous. And so you had these, conferences were created, particularly for football, to sell the product. Because if you look at conferences now, the top conferences, they dictate based on, hey, they go out and sell, their conference, so they're members. And what is crazy to me, why is it that the schools are members of the NCAA, but the conference itself is also a member of the NCAA? Why do you need the conference to be? Because they go out and sell the product. NCAA didn't want to do that. They did it with basketball. That's why they only give a damn about basketball, because they own that. They own March Madness. That's where their revenue comes in. And the other reason that they're like shying away from football and do whatever you want to do is because when you look at football, they don't have any control over it, but they've been losing their behinds on litigation. And they have not won a case. And that's why they're saying, well, just don't sue us. We'll let you do what you want to do. Because they're tired of paying out money for litigation.
Yeah.
So
they can't win. They can't win a court case.
They can't win because, like you said, Allison, they had years ago, they could have addressed this to where, it was something, but they were controlled. And the control was money. You got to understand how much money these universities are making from college athletics, and really two sports, football and men's basketball. And look, some with women's basketball because of the tournament. But again, ESPN is able to rule the roost is because, hey, if I'm giving you some money, you do what I say. That's
$7.8 billion.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Just the NFL. When who plays when, and the timing of it. Because you remember, Alan, when you did college, you used to play. Whatever happened to the 12 o'clock kick?
Yeah.
Big Ten is they've tried to keep it at that, but everybody else, they're dictated. Well, no, your prime time is when we say it is, which is the ESPNs, the ABCs, the NBC, the Foxes, because that's where the money's coming from. Because the schools get the money from the on-campus, when you get butts and seats. How many times do we see a basketball game, a tournament game, or a football game, a bowl game? Nobody in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't care because they're getting paid from the TV, so they get the big thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break here. Let's talk about more just how we want to see the playoff change, because this conversation is not stopping anytime soon. We'll get to that next here on the Irish Squad Show. Today's episode of the Irish Squad Show is brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to score, that's what's on the screen. All right, Jeremiah Love. He's who we're going to give a shout out to. We're going to be looking back during these about some of the best moments in Notre Dame's history and its historical moments. Let's just go back to this last year where Jeremiah Love became the all-time single-game leading rusher against USC. 24 carries, 228 yards, and a touchdown. Now expected to be, I don't know if you look at a mock draft today, a lot of people saying he's going number 8 to the New Orleans Saints. So we'll see where he ends up in the draft. These remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and I never say quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took there to make it count. There's more to Mazda because there's more to you. All right, so we'll be having this discussion again next year, and who knows, maybe the year after that as well. I think that I wanted 16, so I'll go first. I wanted 16 team playoff because I just think it's a better number. Also, one team that's had a bye in 2 years has won their first game, and that's Indiana this last year. That to me does feel like enough of a sample size where it's like Notre Dame, let's be the 5 seed next year, or whatever you want to be. But so I would have liked to see 16, and I think, guys, that maybe it's the most simple change possible. Can we just get 1 through 16? Can we get rid of auto bids for the Big Ten and the SEC and the ACC? Just 1 through 16. The playoffs are the exact same this year, except for Tulane and James Madison. Even if you just go 1 through 12, which is the top 12 seeds. Notre Dame gets in, BYU gets in, everyone's happy. Just 1 through 16, that's it. Simple change. I don't get why no one else views it the same way. At least even all these conferences, they want 4 or 5 auto bids, all these things. So that's how I would change the college football playoff. No guarantees for anybody. Allison, how would you change it?
I agree with you on that aspect of it. I just think that would be what would be the fairest, right? There would be a lot less arguing about does so-and-so deserve to be in. The one thing I would like, and I think we've talked about it, and I don't think any of you guys agreed with me, but I like the idea of more like a play-in game, whereas maybe you have that you take the top 10 and then you've got 4 teams playing to get those 2 final spots, or you've got the top 12 and you've got 4 teams to get those 2 final spots, however whatever number you want to get to with it. But then that's where teams like a Tulane and a James Madison can be in the playoffs, but they're playing in to get in those final 2 spots. And I think that is the most fair, because we're seeing those teams, I'm glad to give them an opportunity, but then we're seeing them getting absolutely blown out when they're going up against the high caliber teams that do deserve to be there. I do like to see it not just always being the same handful of teams over and over again. So whatever needs to be done that allows for a little bit more of the parity, but there just simply isn't a lot of parity because of NIL and those kinds of things. You just have the money to continue building and making these super teams, these super programs. And so they just can't compete when you're going up against even a Cincinnati, or Western Michigan or things like that. If you're a college football player, if you're not going to, beyond just a handful of teams, you really don't have much of a chance at any kind of playoff or national championship hopes. And that to me is one reason why I do believe in keeping the bowl games. I know a lot of people, and probably on this panel, are against the bowl games. And I get it. And it does feel like a waste of time. And I can't say honestly that I watched a ton of those bowl games. So ratings wise, I know they're not getting huge numbers, especially on like December 23rd and things like that. But there are so many other teams in the world of college football that are never going to even have a chance to make the playoffs. So give them something to play for, right? It's not just about the playoff. It's not just about a national championship. It might be for Notre Dame. It might be for Alabama, for those types of teams and programs, but it's not for everybody else. And so they need to have something they're playing for as well. And it might be kind of a cupcake or whatever, but there's a lot to be said for teams that get to have that final game together with their teammates. And I've argued this before about why Notre Dame chose not to be in a bowl game, but just, there are guys that are never going to go to the NFL. There are guys who that is their last chance to play college football with their team. And when they get away from the sport 10, 20, 50 years down the road, they're going to remember that bowl game with their guys, with their brothers, with their teammates, that they shed all those tears and blood and sweat and out there on that field, and to have those final moments together. But anyways, that's off onto a tangent. But for me, I like keeping it at around 12. I would never want to go above 16. 24 muddles it down too much. And I don't think those teams deserve to be in the first place. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I'm happy with 12, but I feel like the top 4 seeds are penalized by not being able to have a game on their campus.
Yes.
And I think it shows in the fact that they're playing at a neutral site where they're supposed to have all these advantages and getting their butt kicked, with the exception of Indiana. So I know probably can't change that because we're so tied to the bowl system, and with the Fiesta and the Peach and the Rose, those are the ones that I guess we delegate power to, are those bowl games. But I sure would prefer to see it where the top 4 seeds could have a game on their campus, and I could do away with the bye. That would be, if they went to 16, then we wouldn't have to have the first round bye. We could just get started a week after the college football regular season ends. But that's what I would want to see, is those top 4 seeds have a game on their campus.
Well, again, and I'm going to belabor this point, I'm not a fan of going, longer. You're going to have to cut. Something has to be cut. Whether it's the conference championship or the bye, to reduce down to where once the regular season is over with, you start into it, because the conference championships, with Notre Dame not being in a conference, it's not necessarily the conference championships or the conferences. They get penalized. Let's be honest. BYU got penalized for losing the ACC championship. SEC didn't, but ACC did. So, are you willing as a conference to give up that conference championship, go to 16, and start the season or start the playoffs a week earlier than what you normally would have? And love you, Allison. I understand the playoff, the bowl system, but you got too many bowls for one.
Well, yes, I will agree.
Because again, for a team to be 6-6 and get to a bowl game, some
or
of
5
them
and 7
is asinine. If you get your butt kicked and you lose and you don't have a winning record, your season is over, and it should be.
I agree with that.
So again, I don't have a problem with the bowls kind of being the if you're going to do the bowl system, then there should be no home games like with first round, second round. They should either be all neutral site, which is the bowl games, or it needs to be all home games for the top ranked team. So I'm good with 16, but if you're going to do 16, you need to bump it up. But it comes back to, are the conferences willing to give up that championship game in those dollars?
Well, can't they just? Okay, we're not talking politics, but I know the president has decided that he wants to write something in law about guaranteeing Army and Navy's window that week after. If you can work around whatever's happening there, can't they just move conference championship weekend to that? Like Army Navy starts us off at 11 a.m. and then everyone else plays Friday and Saturday. Just move everything up a week. Like if they just start moving things up, and they have these huge gaps in the playoff that they don't need. Like they can be done at the Rose Bowl at the end of the year, even if they expand.
Yeah. So the only problem with that, Joe, is it makes too much sense. So,
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, stop doing that, Joe. Stop making sense.
Logic does not count.
Count when it comes. You're just disrupting the whole dynamic here now with this logic business. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people, though, argue that they liked that Indiana got to play in the Rose Bowl. That was a great opportunity. And I get that aspect of it. But I agree with you, Alan, to your point. I mean, even just watching the NFL playoffs this weekend, last weekend, that playoff game in Chicago, that atmosphere was unbelievable. Even this weekend, seeing them in Denver and it was so awesome. And you can't replicate that inside of a dome. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different feeling. Notre Dame gets the opportunity to play at various NFL stadiums because of the way they schedule them, because they're independent, and a lot of other programs don't. And I know that's a big treat for some of them to have that opportunity. But man, just in terms of fan experience, and you got to have some home field advantage. And that's a benefit of being a higher seed, is having that home field advantage. But man, there's just nothing beats having that game at home. Notre Dame hosting Indiana last year for that first playoff game that they got to play. I mean, that was incredible to be there and be a part of it.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole production, the home games this year, I was watching Oklahoma, Alabama. 50 Cent comes out and is singing. They had a fabulous light show. I mean, these schools that had home games really, from a production value aspect, turned it up quite a bit. Texas A&M, with all the fanfare that they had, it's unfortunate they lost, but that's, to me, I think Texas Tech was doomed, because if they had a home game, maybe, although I think they may have been one of the worst teams to get in, especially after they talked all that mess about how much respect they had for BYU, because they went to a conference, and I guess there's something to be said for being there before. But anyway, I think a team like Texas Tech was penalized because they didn't have the opportunity to have a home game. To bring that to Lubbock, to bring that, get the atmosphere of Lubbock, that's incentive for your team to play, to get a playoff game at home. But you can't be the best, damn it. You got to be number 5 or 5 through 8.
Well, we've talked about money a lot. Like, that's where I think, like, the first 2 rounds with 16 teams being at home, like, it's going to make them money. At College Station, they were projecting that they would make over like $4 to $5 million from hotels. They said they made $3.1 million from hotels when South Carolina came to College Station this year. So who knows what the Miami impact was on that game? Then your restaurants and your bars and everything is just goes up and up and up and up. It's just more way to make money. So I think eventually we'll get there.
But who makes that money?
Well, but the town, the town makes the money.
The town, but also the team.
Yes.
Who doesn't make that money?
The players.
The NCAA.
No.
Oh.
Not just the NCAA. ESPN is not getting paid for hotels.
That's true.
They're not getting paid from the tickets that are generated to go to the game. So this goes back to the dynamic of who's running college athletics. So and who runs the bowl system? ESPN.
Yep.
So, I mean, but think about it, you can't take them out of that dynamic, is because that's who's paying. How much you say, Allison?
$7.8 billion.
It's a lot of money.
Because they said about Notre Dame, they took their ball and went home and blah blah blah. Isn't that what ESPN is doing? If you want to play, if you want to participate as conferences, this is how you participate. Because people, I mean, whether it may not have been a lot of viewership on the bowl games, but people watch college football.
Yeah.
It's a fix. You need that fix. So ESPN is making money. Because you know what would be, if they wanted to, hey, have them. Again, I'm a big fan of having the games at, the home stadiums. Well, I mean, ESPN is already doing, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah. Mac Tuesdays, Mac Wednesdays.
Yeah. So why can't you do it then? But having the games at the stadiums of the home team, I firmly believe, like I said, that would make a big difference, not for ESPN, but for the schools. That dynamic, 100% with you on that, Alan. But again, they can't do that is because ESPN has a deal with the bowl system to have them at bowl games. Because, how is it that you, like you said, you have a number, you get a bye and you're at a neutral site. But the teams the week before, I get home games. You didn't see none of that money. A&M got paid. A&M cool. Hey, we might have lost, but man, we got some money out of that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, that's who's dictating versus, like, Joe, you using that common sense stuff, which we got to stop that. You got
no more common sense.
Yeah, but that's where we're at until the NCAA is willing to take back control, but with the common sense perspective. That's the only way you're going to get this fixed, because until you take the money dynamic, not take it out, but not make it the primary focus. And who's going to do that?
And they don't want to do it because they'll get sued, and they don't know how to win in court.
They will lose as they continue to lose over.
But the thing about it,
again.
Who wouldn't lose? Their member institutions.
Yeah.
Like if you got like individual schools like Big Ten, they were nervous because you had Ohio State, Michigan pissy about something. If you get Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State or Wisconsin that has brand power to flex that. And that's why they're so pissed about Notre Dame, is that Notre Dame has been flexing their brand power for decades.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's what we do. Instead of come join me, because you can't tell me the way that you could.
Yeah.
That's
right,
Georgia,
we start
Florida,
to leave no doubt tour.
Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. If they set up.
All right, we're losing Reggie. We lost Reggie. We lost Reggie. That's all right. But we're going to wrap up anyways. So that will do it for this episode of the Irish Squad Show. Thank you all for listening and watching. One thing I want to start plugging. We'll soon, probably next week, we'll put out some info here about where you can contribute to this. But we are going to do, in our first off season of the squad shows here, we're going to do the top 10 Notre Dame players of all time, where I'm going to create an email so people will also be able to contribute to this list and vote on who they think should be in the top 10. So we'll start that in a couple weeks here as we start to work our way through the off season. So that will do it for us today. We will talk to you next week. Go Irish. Peace.